historians say. But in general usage, I guess we push it back a little bit so that some of the artists at the turn of the 19th century are included in this time period. And so, as you probably have seen in the exhibit, the information tells us that this is a time of kind of volatility, social volatility, a lot of questioning of conventions, and it's also a very fertile art period. So those two things going on at the same time. There was a kind of interest in the demi-mondaine, the kind of the courtesans and the pleasures of life, as well as a general sense of optimism and hope about the possibilities of new technology. So, well, can we go? Yeah, maybe can you do this for me, or? Yeah, okay, so I'll just signal to you when I'm ready. Better you do it than I. So this you may know this poster. It's by Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, and to me it kind of expresses that cultural mood of seedy underworld music hall and also a great sense of optimism. Toulouse-Lautrec, you may know already, was very interested in that part of life, and he made it a point to kind of spend time in the world, in the realm of actresses, courtesans, dancers, circus performers, street entertainers. These people really fascinated him. So it's kind of part of that decadence of the period. He was really interested in the cafes and the nightlife, and so this figures into his artwork a great deal. Okay, just another example which I loved of the kind of atmosphere that people would have assumed about dance. You know, this is it right here. It's the music hall, it's the cafe, it's the nightlife. That's what people would have thought of dance in La Belle Époque. And yeah, that's fine, you can go ahead. This sort of gives an example of how people might have socialized at night. They often would have gone to a dance hall. This was a place where people, sort of what we might consider middle class people could go, and they'd perform polkas, waltzes, contra dances, that kind of thing. So that was a very popular part of their lives. They also could attend music halls, theaters, and this was what was going on, the cafe scene. Okay. And I think this is kind of revealing also the gentleman here, ordering a drink and sort of ogling the performers. It's another, kind of insight into that period. And yes, I love this one. This is, these are the circus performers. And, each one of them is kind of a character. They were, he really took time to think about them as people, and I love that one. So it's just kind of that life. And I included this because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the great advancements of science. And in fact, there was a very impressive exhibition in Paris in 1900, and Loie Fuller actually had her own pavilion in this exhibition, which I'll talk about in a little while. But it was a time when electricity and the possibilities of that form, that energy form, were really vibrant and very, very much exciting to people. So there was a lot of kind of confidence and optimism about the future. Okay. It's also, as I said, a very creative time period, and so it's the era of Proust and Debussy and other musicians, Gabriel Fauré, Jules Massenet, Camille Saint-Saëns. You may know that era, and they were also, many of them, taking some influence from from Asia, and especially the Japanese art. And here we come to what Parisians would have thought about if you'd asked them, what is dance? The can-can. That's what they knew. Okay, let's stay here for a second. This is obviously quite a well-known poster, and it's interesting that Toulouse-Lautrec took an interest in this particular can-can dancer, Jeanne Avril, who has a kind of interesting side story of her own. She had some kind of a nervous disorder. That made her twitch, and she had this, issue, this health issue, which somehow dancing was a way for her to deal with it. And so she had kind of a strange movement style, but she was very unusual, and apparently working in, kind of the music halls and the brothels and so on. And Toulouse-Lautrec took a great interest in her, made this poster of her, and her career then took off, and she was able to kind of start a tour, and as a result of this advertising that he'd done for her, she became sort of a well-known figure. She had a sad ending. She died impoverished and so forth, but she at least had some career boost from Toulouse-Lautrec. Okay, and this is another. It's very lovely in a way. Here's another can-can artist that he took an interest in, La Goulou, which is the glutton. One can only imagine. And this, he somehow manages to, I think he manages to really humanize her here, give her some humanity. She's not just this figure, but he's really kind of sympathizing with her and seeing this kind of life that she's leading. Okay, so ballet. What was going on with ballet? This is what people would have thought of ballet dancers. The great glory period of the Romantic ballet was in the 1830s, 1840s. So if you know any of the Romantic ballets, La Sylphide, 1832, Giselle, 1841, these had virtually disappeared from people's memories at this point. I know it's hard to imagine because we have this long-standing reverence for the ballets of the past, but at this time, what ballet meant to people was kind of spectacle. It was very big pageants that women kind of tromped around the stage in unison, and the ballet dancers themselves were not held in very high esteem. They were not high in the social ladder. They were often from very impoverished backgrounds, and this was a way for them to earn a little bit of an income. And they were also often prostitutes. So there was this kind of easy association that people made between dancers and, courtesans, or dancers and prostitutes. So it was not something that nice people went to see. And we have actually this in the exhibit here, and it's really beautiful, and I love the colors and so forth, but it can show you exactly what people assumed about ballet dancers at the time. This one and the next one, please. She's selling something. It's not her point shoes. So I'm just giving you this little glimpse also of what's coming on the heels of the time period that we're talking about. So in a few years, Paris will be the, recipient of this great, exciting ballet troupe from Russia, which, with all the great artwork of Léon Bakst and Alexander Benoit, and these very exciting designs, and great evocations of Russianness, right? So this is on the cusp when actually Paris becomes reintroduced to the highest form of ballet, which is, the Imperial Theater trained artists and these very enticing and beautiful, fully fleshed out works by choreographers like Michel Fokine, and later choreographers Nijinsky and Balanchine also made his debut in this, or he choreographed for this company. So this is just on the horizon here, and this is when all of Paris will become reintroduced to the art of ballet. So Loie Fuller and the Diaghilev era artists intersect at some points, and it's very interesting to note that they took some ideas from her. So she was innovative in many ways, and some of these ideas moved into the classical ballet. They were taken over by some of the classical ballet artists. And here she is, Loie Fuller herself. Not all that exciting looking, but she was quite a show woman, let's say. She was quite a show woman. I should say that she was the greatest storyteller of her own life. So when you go back to look at information about Loie Fuller, you have to kind of sift through all the stories. She wrote her own autobiography, and it was the story that she wanted everyone to know about her. For instance, she shaved off a few years. She tells us that she was born in 1870. Most dance researchers put her birth date at 1862, so she was a little older than she wanted us to think. She claims to have been born in a tavern, and the reason for this was that her parents lived in this very remote town in Illinois, and when her mother was about to give birth, they made their way into town. It was a cold winter day. They made their way into town. The only well-lit and and warm place was this tavern. So she saw life in a tavern. She was born into a tavern. And as I said, the myths are, they abound. She claims that her mother took her to the Chicago progressive lyceum. And at the age of 2.5, she got up on a platform and recited "Mary Had a Little Lamb" for the audience. So that was the beginning of her stage career. And she was a child actress. She, for a while, was a temperance lecturer. She recited Shakespeare in some of the Shakespeare readings that they used to do. She went to New York and was acting in New York, various plays. She was acting in a play, and she produced her own play. She toured with Buffalo Bill. Just to give you a little insight into her many, many talents. She, at some point, runs in or encounters this gentleman named Colonel William Hayes. And he is, by the way, the nephew of Rutherford Hayes, the president, former president. But anyway, Colonel Hayes, she was in a little bit of a sticky spot. She needed some money, and he loaned her some money. And instead of just, kind of a standard IOU, she signed a marriage contract. Yeah, it's an extraordinary life. So she signed this marriage contract, and there was no church ceremony and no, judge. They just signed a contract, and apparently they never lived together, though he sort of followed her around on her acting circuit. She eventually sued him for bigamy because she found out that he not only had a wife on the side, but he also had a mistress. So that was the end of that. She sued him, and they settled the suit. And apparently she used that money. She was very ashamed by the publicity of this story. So she used this money to travel to Europe. But I want to pick up with this skirt dance and tell you about where the skirt dance comes from. The story is that she was having dinner with these Indian army officers, and a little while later she received a package, and she opened up the box, and there was this beautiful piece of silk fabric in it. And she took it out and started kind of, tossing it in the air, and the light from the windows was playing across the surface of this silk. And she says this was, her epiphany moment. And she then used that, and it sort of turned her interest to not only dancing, but also the effect of light on fabric. So here you see her in this skirt dance. Now, can I have the next slide, please? She was not the first person to work with a skirt. That was a very kind of traditional music hall stint. And there were many, people who were quite well known at it. This Kate Vaughan, for instance, was the woman, an English skirt dancer who was very well known in the music halls in England. Some of the skirt dancers were quite salacious. Loie was not. She was very, very interested, as I said, in kind of the effect of light on the skirt. So she had been in New York working as an actress, and it was really hard for her to get people to take her seriously as a dancer. So finally she came upon this theater producer, and he agreed to look at her little dance, and she performed. He accompanied her at the piano, And it was he who labeled it the serpentine dance. So that got her inspired, and she actually tried to tour as a dancer. She, as I said, she got very interested in the effects of light, so she started making these dances and naming them dance number one, which had a certain light. It was the blue dance. Dance number two, the red dance, and so forth and so on. So she created these dances that were mainly about the effects of light. Okay, so here, this is a kind of, capture of what she must have looked like. And she extended her arms by holding the skirt over wands. So it was, quite strenuous, actually, to move the wand and to hold. So she moves the wand all over and moves her torso and so forth. It's quite a strenuous activity, but the effect of the light and the movement of the fabric was quite extraordinary. So when I left off, she was using this money from Colonel Hayes to make her way to Germany. And from there, she toured to Paris. And she made her debut in Paris at the Folies Bergère. And here's she was an overnight sensation. I mean, she was that thing that very few of us ever really see, but she became the talk of Paris overnight. And in order to kind of forestall the many people who were trying to imitate her, she became La Loie. In other words, the Loie. Can we have the next? Yes. So forgive me, I just want to read this to you. It's from the sketch, the newspaper in London from 1900. But it's very descriptive of what people saw when they were watching her dance. So I'll just read it for you. The orgy of color was so wonderful as to leave objection mute. Light came from every side. La Loie danced upon glass, from which the vivid splendor of the headlights was reflected, while from the wings, stage, and orchestra, wonderful luminous streams seemed to flow toward her. With the rhythm of the music, the colors changed, and where white ruled before, there was a kaleidoscopic vision. Violet, orange, purple, and mauve movements succeeded in rapid succession until a rich, deep red dominated the dancer, and she became, for one brief moment, a living rose with a palpitating heart and flying leaves. Then the hues of the rainbow came from all sides and ranged themselves upon the ever-moving draperies. Every fold had its tint and scheme of color intensified by the surrounding darkness until the eye could scarcely bear to look. Just as the strain was becoming almost intolerable, the colors disappeared, there was a white flash of appalling brilliancy, and La Loie faded under diaphanous drapery. They don't write critiques like that anymore. So she was a sensation for many, many artists. Mallarmé, the poet, tried to capture something of her, essence in his poetry. He was very enraptured by her. Obviously, Toulouse-Lautrec, and here we have an example of an artist trying to capture her movement in bronze. This is a gilt bronze table lamp. She eventually was, and yes, this is the lovely Toulouse-Lautrec. Again, trying somehow to capture that movement is what intrigues them. She did manage to get accepted back in New York. She went back to New York briefly, although most of her career was spent in Paris. But finally, she went back and they gave her, they paid attention to her after she was a raging success in Paris. And she performed at the Music Hall in New York in 1896 and apparently was paid the largest salary ever paid to a vaudeville artist. And in further evidence of how much of a transformation she had caused, the newspapers encouraged even the ladies to come see her dance. So it was quite an extraordinary thing. So she was, oh yes, one last little description. And this is also very interesting because of the way this writer describes the space in which she performed. Like a strange jewel hidden in the depths of your black velvet case, you exude outwards, heated from the burning cinders. Prismatic rays play in your hair. The light caresses and lasciviously plays on your hair. The light caresses and lasciviously plays on your plump, childish body. Exquisitely denuded by the transparency of the rosy silk crepe. A whirlwind stirs you, and like a fabulous salamander, you become smoky colored from the burning flame. It is a mirage, a magic which burns our vision, intoxicating our spirits. I think they were very excited about her. And this is a really kind of wonderful evocation of an imagined La Loie, because she wouldn't have danced nude at all. So it's really, this effort to capture her. So she was innovative in many ways for dance in particular. She worked she worked with great music, for one thing. And this was sort of a new thing because dancers were not expected to work with good music. They were expected to dance to little tunes and so forth. But once she moved dance into a high art realm, it became, she was dancing to Debussy. She was dancing, well, you'll see, to Wagner and Chopin. So this is quite extraordinary that she's accepted as working with concert artists. And also she moved dance from a sense of kind of being a character or telling a story into the realm of the abstract. So it's very symbolic. She's never portraying these characters or these figures, but she's suggesting them. So it's very imagistic. Her work could suggest various natural images. It's very much in line with some of the Art Nouveau work. You look at it and it might suggest some kind of tendril or some kind of living organism. And that's effectively what she was doing in dance. She was sort of freeing it from being necessarily a story or a character and making it an abstract art. She was a great innovator in terms of lighting, and some of the innovations that she created are still effective today. She, for instance, created a color wheel with different plates of glass, and they could be painted different colors, and then they could insert the colors that the light would shine through across her body. So she was very experimental. She was very interested in chemistry. She was a great friend of the Curies, Marie and Pierre Curie, and she employed electricians. You know, a body of electricians would travel with her when she went. And so she was very much kind of pushing the forefront of what was dance, but also a person of her time in the sense that she was really utilizing all the technological advances that were available to her. So I thought what we would do now is take a look at this recreation of the 1896 fire dance. And this, as I said, was performed in 2003, and it was the joint project of two graduate students. One was getting her MFA in lighting, so she really worked to recreate the lighting effects that they were able to research from Loie Fuller's work. And the other one was working in notation, and she recreated this dance and then transposed it into Laban notation score. So could we look at the film? It's as exciting on film as it was in the space, in the theater. It was great. Thank you. So I'm happy to talk to you about if you have any